Good morning, buenos dias, bonjour, welcome, aloha, namaste, assalamu alaikum. See who is on here this morning. I'm having a little challenge getting my lighting right here today, but this may be what I need to do. Hey, Constance. Hey, Connie Sue. Good morning, buenos dias. Hello, hello. I'm not sure about this shot. Hey, Sonia. Hope you had a good birthday this week. Jeffrey, hello. I'm wondering if I should take that one blind down. Oh, well, it's fine. Can't always be perfect. Hey, Avery. Carl, what's up? Michelle, good morning. Keith, good to see you on here. Who else we got? I was going to go up on the roof. When I got up, I opened up the window. I said, nope, I won't be going up on the roof today. It's chilly here in A-Town. Hey, Rhonda. Hey, Jeannie. Let's see if I can at least center this a little better. Maybe that's better. Hey, Yuri. Good to see you on here. All right, that'll do. I'm perfect. I'll receive it, Leslie. Thank you. We're all perfect. We just don't know it. We're all having to go back to our original perfection. Hey, Miss Leona. I don't know if you're still in the hospital, but we're sending good vibes to you. Hey, Ann. Stephanie, hello. Good. I'm glad to hear it, Sonia. Good. Excellent. You deserve it. Good. While you guys are logging on and saying hello to each other, let me give you a few announcements. This is our next to the last. Hey, Romanita. This is our next to the last mobile Metron. 2 weeks from today, we're going back to. First of all, we're moving to the Atlanta Theater on Arizona Avenue. Hey, Greg. And hey, Danny. After that, we'll be back live every Sunday at 11 a.m. And I'm ready for that. I'm ready to go back to that live meeting. And hey, Reggie. We're going to be, good. Well, hey to Ernie as well, Leona. Anyway, April 2nd, we'll be at the Atlanta Theater. Jared will be back. He's flying in. He just finished up Vietnam and Cambodia. He's flying in from Thailand tonight. I'm picking him up at around 7. Hey, Barbara. And he's going to be doing an In the Now with Jim Swilley joint presentation with me. That's going to be really good. Looking forward to that. Hey, Greg. Hey, Barbara. And then the following Sunday is Easter. Johnny Almanza, the cello player, is going to be back with us. I love that guy. If you've never heard him, you're going to love it. And there's a lot I could tell you about the new theater. It's a very different setup. I'm not going to over-explain it to you because you'll get it when you get there. You'll get it and you love it. You'll love it. If I try to tell you all the, look for this, look for that, you'll figure it out. One thing I learned about Metron is I don't have to really over-explain stuff. To people who are really connected, they just have a get it factor. Like I remember... we used to do, in the early years of Metron, hey Beth, we used to do a monthly, it was before we started the meditation weekends, and we used to do a monthly outing. And 1 month we did it at, we went to the King Center, to MLK's birth home, and to Ebenezer. We went over to the Center for Civil and Human Liberties. Hey, Valerie. And hey, Freddie. I don't think anybody... Sorry about that. But, and then we were going to go to Mary Mac's and meet for lunch. And Mary Mac's Tea Room is this iconic place in Midtown Atlanta. It's been there since 1945, but it's one of those things you kind of have to know about it to know where to go. It's like you have to park. Pretty much, you have to park on the street, and there's it's like if you're not Midtown savvy, it can be a bit of a challenge finding a place to park. And I was trying to text everybody to explain, here's the street you can go park on, and hey Brenda, and hey Fred. And finally I just thought, you know what, there's no way I can get this message to everybody. And I'm telling you, I forgot how many people went to lunch that day. It was like 40, I guess. And everybody came walking in on time, and nobody was stressed out. Everybody knew where to go, park. And I thought, I never should underestimate this group. They can always figure it out. And having said that, please, if you're going to the meditation weekend at the end of April, please join the group page. You can scroll up to my cover photo here on the on Facebook, and it's got all the information about it. You can shows you where you don't have to ask. You don't have to be get permission to come in. You just click on it, and you'll be on there. But that pretty much everybody that ever texts me that can't find where we're meeting for meditation is just, I'll say, "Did you join the group page?" No. Well, this is why. This is why you don't know where we are. Anyway, so all right. Next week I'll do Mobile Metron. Sunday after that's April 2nd. Jared's going to be with us. We're going to be at the Atlanta Theater. We're also going to do a little celebration for my birthday, because my birthday is April 3rd, and it's a milestone one this year. And then on the 9th is Easter. We're gonna be serving communion, and I'll explain more about that as we get closer to it. And then April 29th and 30th, we're going to be in St. Simon's for our 18th meditation weekend. This is our 5th time to do one of these in St. Simon's. It's going to be awesome. All right. I think you're all on now, and let's do some affirmations. When I point to me, I say it. When I point to you, you say it. So here we go. I am blessed. I am a blessing. I am. I am well. I am wellness. I am. I am is the highest affirmation. We always want to ascend up to that. I am healed. I am health. I am. I am free. I am freedom. I am. I am joyful. I am joy. I am. I am happy. I am happiness. I am. I am whole. I am wholeness. I am. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Always say those things out loud, like get them out into the universe, into the unified quantum field. Yeah, that's a good one, Rhonda. We'll do it. I am successful. I am success. I am. Love it. All right, give me some breaths. We're going to go in through the nose, hold it, and out through the mouth. It's a simple relaxation technique. We'll get more into this at the meditation weekend, but this is to keep you aware of it. We're going to go in, hold, and out. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Give me a couple of more. In. Out. Inhale. Exhale. Beautiful. I love when we create the synergy of doing the affirmations with the breath work. It's something that I'm sure you get in your spirit, even if you can't intellectualize it. So if you get a chance to look at, I think I did 2, maybe 3. I know I did at least 2 11:11s this week. And I think they're both worth checking out. I had something really important to say, and real happy with the reception of that. All right, here's the word. I speak into the atmosphere. I say, let there be light. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me to preach liberty to the captives. All right, this is what I've been thinking about this week. I was already thinking about, this was already gestating in my spirit. I was pregnant with it. And then, when, like I've told you before, when a word is brewing on the inside of me, I start noticing just synchronistic confirmations everywhere. Synchronicities, so cool. Even some of you is it 11:11? Cool. Yeah, it sure is. Some of you, I shared this week about the painting that I did, My Heart is a Tree of Life. And I thought I just painted it for me, but then I don't think she'll mind me saying, Jaquita, who's Brenda's daughter, asked if she could purchase it. And she did. And it started off this whole string of synchronicities, very similar to the thing that happened with Ed the week before, where he bought a painting for somebody. It turned out they requested the painting I'd actually done for them a year ago they didn't even know about. And even yesterday, this most recent painting, I took it to the frame shop where I always have them put a wire on it. And walking into the place, there's this family that, they said they were, he had a whole story about how they were homeless. And I mean, I hear it so many times during a day, but this seemed credible. And I said, well, let me go in here. I'm breaking, I don't have any, I had a 50 on me. I didn't want to give him a 50, but I thought I can give him 20 or 30. And they usually charge me about $10 to put the wire on. So I thought I'll pay cash for this, and the change I'll come out and give to this guy. So I went in, and the woman who was doing the work said, oh my God, did you paint this for somebody else? And I said, well, I thought I'd painted it for me, and turns out it was really for somebody else. And so she came around the counter and was looking at it. And when I say we were tearing up, I'm not saying we were both sitting there like sobbing, but it got real emotional because I explained to her the whole reason I did it. And I said, she says, well, I'm not even going to charge you for this because this, first of all, she asked if she could buy it. And I said, no, it's already paid. Somebody's already bought it. But then she said, well, I'm not going to charge you anything. And so I said, oh, really? I said, there's a guy out here that I was going to give money to. I was hoping you could break this 50. And sometimes on a Saturday morning, places don't have a lot of cash. So it's hard to get change sometimes. And she said, no, I'll break it for you. And so we were talking about the homeless guy out there, and we both got, it was like this real moment, and I thought, man, this painting's got such good juju on it, but it's really more than the painting. It's when one person's, what I was telling you the other night, like walking in the Spirit or walking in synchronicity it's very much like a chess game. And when one person gets into position, like out of obedience from Spirit or Source or whatever your higher power definition is, I'm good with all of it. But when you get in the proper place, it sets off this chain reaction of all these other things happening. That's why paying it forward is so powerful, because sometimes you pay it forward and it sets off this chain reaction of these other acts of obedience, acts of kindness, whatever. So in my case, the synchronicity it's little green lights from the universe that let me know, like, wow, this really is the word, the Rhema word, at least for me. And the people who hear my voice. I was thinking about, and I'm going to read it to you from the Message Bible, but I've been thinking, for some reason the last few days, I've just been thinking about some of the most basic things that Jesus said that we're so accustomed to hearing that we don't really hear them. Like the other night, I was explaining why I want to do communion, because, I don't believe Jesus died on the cross to appease an angry sky god. I believe Jesus died on the cross to change our perception of ourselves. And so I was thinking about, serving communion on Easter, and I thought, how do I explain this to people who maybe aren't familiar with a lot of things that I've already taught up to this point? And I just went back to where Jesus said, if you grew up in a Protestant church, you saw this on your, it was engraved on your communion table in front of the pulpit. Do this in remembrance of me. And just something as simple as that. When Jesus said, I'm doing this because I want you to remember me. I want you to remember this Passover. I want you to remember this. When I say this is my body, I'm not talking about this piece of bread. I'm talking about this collection of men that I've been with for the last 36 months in this incarnation. And when he says, this is my body, which is broken for you, it's not broken to make an angry God happy. I'm breaking this body for you. This is the blood that's shed for the remission of your sins. That's why, Jesus even said in John chapter 20, before he ascends, he breathes on the disciples and he says, receive the Holy Spirit. Whoever sins you retain or retained, whoever sins you remit or remitted. So basically when he says, this is my blood which is shed for the remission of sins, he's saying, this is going to enable you to forgive yourself because you're retaining these sins and self-accusations. You're the accuser of the brethren. You're the one who's bombarding you with accusations. And I'm doing this for you, but I want you to remember me. That's why he goes to Peter after the resurrection and he says, do you love me? I need to know, I'm not talking about going to heaven. I'm not talking about being wounded for your transgressions. I just want to know whatever I thought was real between us during this time, was this real? And he asked him 3 times, do you love me? And he said it until Peter started crying. It's like, yes, absolutely, I love you. And so I've been thinking a lot about that. And then somehow the neuropath connected me with Matthew chapter 11. And it's down towards the end of the chapter, like verse 28, 29, 30, where Jesus says, come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden. Take my yoke upon you. Learn of me, for I am meek and lowly of heart. For my burden is easy and my yoke is light. Now, what a yoke. I'm laughing because there's a verse in Isaiah that says the anointing destroys the yoke. And over the years, I've had so many people write me letters and say, Bishop, you have such a great anointing to destroy the yolks. So they'll write YOLKS, like, well, we're not making an omelet. The yoke, YOKE, is that piece of wood that went over the back of 2 animals, usually oxen. When you yoked 2 beasts of burden together, the way you turned them. I didn't know this one time until Ken had used this phrase. Somebody didn't jihad, and I was laughing at it. I said jihad, but I Googled it, and it's actually an agricultural term. That G and haw is like the words for right and left when you're farming, when you're plowing up a field. So when you yoke 2 animals together, 2 are better than 1. 2 can cover more territory. And so when the yoke is this piece of wood that forces them to G together and to haw together, so that when one turns to the left, the other goes to the left. And so when Jesus says, take my yoke upon you, he's saying, stop being yoked up with things in life that are unnecessarily complicated and take my yoke upon you because it's easy. My burden is light. It's not complicated. It's not oppressive. So that's just been kind of in me for days. And I don't think I've taught on that much. But Oh, thank you, Leona. So I was watching The View this past Friday. Friday was St. Patrick's Day. And I try to connect with it because Swilley is supposedly Irish, but I've been to Ireland. I didn't really feel connected to it. I don't know. I think I need to try it again. I do love St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, but I don't necessarily identify with Irishness, but whatevs. Anyway, I was watching The View, and they had Nicholas Braun on, who's the guy that's in the series Succession, and it's coming back on for fourth season, fifth season. And at the end of his interview, they were asking him, there's some famous sandwich shop in New York that he has become the proprietor of. It's like very well-known, famous, but it had fallen into disrepair. And he went online and started this GoFundMe thing to save it. So he brings out a sampling of all these beautiful sandwiches. If you've ever ordered sandwiches at a New York deli, they're like works of art. Like if you ever get a sandwich like from the Roxy Deli, they're like this tall. There's no possible way you could eat them. It's like, I can't imagine how much food they throw away in New York. But anyway, there are these huge sandwiches, beautiful bread, beautiful presentation. And so he brought the sandwiches out to the ladies, and Sonny Hostin, who was on there, who's Catholic, says, well, I can't eat any of that because it's the Friday of Lent and we're not allowed to eat meat. She's Catholic. And she says, but is pastrami on there? And he said, yeah, for some reason, there was some loophole that Catholics could eat something because of St. Patrick's Day. They could make an exception and eat. It was some complicated rule. And I was listening to it, and look, I'm not throwing Catholicism under the bus because every belief system has its rules. But I'm listening to this whole thing about Lent and what you can eat. You can't eat meat on a Friday, but there's an exception today because it's St. Patrick's Day. And I thought, do people really think God cares about that? I mean, do they really think that came from God? But then, I read some of the rules that Moses came up with, and I think, Mo, there's no way you could tell me that came from God. Moses supposedly gets 10 commandments on Mount Sinai, and by the time we get to the end of the Torah, there's 613. He just kept coming up with rule after rule after rule after rule. You've broken about 17 of them this morning. And again, not to defame the Catholic Church, but even this morning I was reading the Pope, who I'm a fan of. The Pope's, he's in his own way, he's been very positive for LGBTQ rights. But he didn't change the rule, but he has come out this week and said that the whole celibacy requirement for priests was never meant to be a commandment. It was a temporary thing. So he's kind of setting the stage for, at some point, that being rescinded. And again, I thought, man, it's amazing. Religion has so many rules that have nothing to do with God or what's important to God. Jesus said, you strain at gnats and you swallow camels. And like I said, every belief system has them. And I'm not against rules per se. I know that, there has to be laws and basketball has certain rules and football has certain rules. That's why you have referees, and that's why sometimes somebody will argue with the ref because he calls it a certain way. Yes, Jeanette, you're right. A lot of it was for safety. Yeah, absolutely. I refer to this a lot, but in Acts chapter 10, when Peter, really this happened so that Peter would overcome his bigotry against Gentiles. But he's on the way to Cornelius's house and was very uncomfortable about it. It's the only time we read that they never touched anybody because, Jews didn't even want to touch Gentiles. And But that's where, he falls asleep on the patio on the roof, and the sheet comes down out of heaven, and God shows him all these unkosher foods and commands him to kill and eat them. And Peter is more religious than God is. Peter's like, no, those things will never touch my lips. And God said, no, I don't care. Eat them, have some ribs, get a shrimp cocktail. But it was really hard. It's funny because religious people find God too much of a libertarian. Like growing up in the Pentecostal church, I can't tell you how many preachers I heard teach that Jesus did not turn water into wine. They would make this whole big case for it was not really fermented, and it was, but it was wine. There's no getting around it. But we just could not get our heads around a Jesus who would provide the booze for a party. And so people's rules become more real to them than their relationship with the supernatural or with God or with transcendency. That's why Jesus said your traditions make the word ineffective. Like the word can't work because it's filtered through these traditions that are meaningless. They're unnecessary. Jesus even told the Pharisees one time, he said, you tie these heavy burdens on the backs of people that you yourselves can't carry. Like all these rules you have, because the Pharisees and the Jewish leaders were constantly clutching the pearls over, something that Jesus and his disciples did. You can't heal on the Sabbath, or, these guys, they went through a field and they ate the tops off the wheat. They're like, you're not doing it right. It's like they're walking around with a whistle, blowing foul on just everything Jesus did. And Jesus is constantly breaking the rules, constantly turning it inside out, taking the law and inverting it. He used the word fulfill, but when he said fulfill, he really meant to completely dismantle it and make it make sense in the larger context. So I was thinking about this whole thing about why is religion so complicated? And I'm going to read this. This is Matthew 11, 28 through 30 in the Message Bible. He says, are you tired? It says, are you tired, worn out? I'm sorry, every time I read this, it makes me think of Lucy with the Vitamita Vegemin. Are you tired? Are you listless? Do you poop out at parties? Well, I'm sorry. I've watched entirely too much TV. But he says, are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Listen to this sentence. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly. I'm going to read this one more time. Matthew 11, 28 through 30 in the Message Bible. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly. Now, this is why I want to talk about this. Were you thinking the same? If you've never seen Lucy doing the Vitamita Vegemin, Google it on YouTube. It's hysterical. Anyway, it seems that so much of Jesus' teaching was about simplification, scaling down. Stop obsessing over commandments. I'm just going to give you two. I'm going to make this very accessible. Love God with all of your heart. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Don't make it any more complicated than that. Now, for some of you, you'll have no point of reference of what I'm about to say. If you weren't raised in a church that taught dispensationalism, like the study of last days, end time, like we grew up on the edge, always on the last days. And the way the teachers that we followed, the way they came up with the doctrines of eschatology is they took some things out of the book of Daniel, a lot out of John's revelation on Patmos, and a few things that Jesus said, a couple things that Paul said. And they put together this sort of Frankenstein monster of, this is what we believe. This is what I grew up being taught to believe, that at a certain point, a trumpet was going to blow and we were going to fly. We who were part of our denomination, basically, we're going to fly away for 7 years. We're not sure exactly where we're going to go, but we're going to leave the earth for 7 years. During which time there's going to be a tribulation period, and it's going to be divided up into 2 sections. I'm not making this up. Some of you have never heard this, but I'm telling you, this is what I grew up hearing, that there is a tribulation and a great tribulation. The first half of the tribulation period is 3.5 years. The second, and there's verses of scripture to support all of these. Irrelevant as they may be, this is how we put together this crazily complicated doctrine. So at the end of the 7 years, 3.5 plus 3.5, then Jesus comes back to the earth, but we come back with him. So it's a whole bunch of us. It's multitudes of us coming back on horses. And then Jesus sets up this kingdom called the millennial kingdom, in which we who have been away, I don't know, in heaven or on another planet or something, we've been away for 7 years. So now we're going to come back and live on the earth. We're going to set up, I don't know if our houses are still going to be available. I don't know, we got to buy a new house, whatever. We're going to live on the earth while Jesus has this 1,000-year millennial reign. And we're not going to die anymore. This is why I never get mad at the Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses for believing something that's really out there, because what I was raised on was just as crazy. And we're going to live for 1,000 years. We're not going to die, but our next door neighbors are. So for 1,000 years, we're going to watch people live and die just like they do now. And, those that have still rejected the gospel, that somehow weren't martyred during the 7-year period. And people still aren't going to believe, even though, here we are. Oh, is that what you heard, Avery? Yeah, possibly. So after 1,000 years, then Satan, who's been in this bottomless pit, which again, John was having a dream when he said all this. He said, all of this was allegorical. Revelation is not meant to be taken literally. And if John were sitting here with me, next to me on this chair, I promise you he would agree with me on this. But then, the cross wasn't enough. The tribulation period wasn't enough. 1,000 years of trying to convince people still was not enough. So one more time, even though Jesus said in John chapter 12, now the God of this world is cast down, he's going to come out of the pit one more time. And then he's going to wage war with Jesus. And Jesus is going to, like a sword's going to come out of his mouth. Again, this is all prophetic allegories. Sword's going to come out of his mouth in this thing called the Battle of Armageddon that happens at the Valley of Megiddo. I've been there. When you go on a tour to Israel, they take you there and they say, this is where the final thing is going to be. And, you look around and you're like, I must not get it, because it just looks like a field to me, but okay. And then finally, oh yeah, Brenda. Yeah, absolutely. Then finally, the holy city comes out of heaven and sets up here on the earth. And we, those of us who were part of our denomination live, with Jesus, while the rest of humanity burns in hell for eternity. And I remember one time One time I asked my dad, back when he was still pastoring, I said, we were in his office. I said, can I ask you something? I said, this is off the record. I will not, whatever you say to me is in the vault. I will not tell any, I won't even tell Mom. Just tell me, do you honestly believe all that's going to happen? You really think we're going to fly away for 7 years and come back and then live here for 1,000 and then we're going to be a part of this? I mean, you think that's going to happen? And he says, well, that's what the scripture says. And no, I'm asking, in your heart of hearts, do you believe that? And he just kept him-hawing around and said, Dad, I'll never quote you, which here, he's gone, we're coming up in 3 years, he's going up, he won't mind me saying it now. I said, do you really think it's going to happen? He said, well, I would have never seen that in the Bible if it hadn't been for like the Schofield Bible, the Dake Bible. I would have never put all those things together to come up with that. So, no. I said, thank you. That's what I thought. And he didn't teach, to his credit, he didn't teach on a lot of that stuff. Because it's basically a bunch of scriptures taken out of context and making them mean something that they never meant to be about, and come up with this, I'm sorry, but cockamamie thing that, I think the prophets of old would look at all that and think, that's what you came up with? Like that, that's some seriously complicated stuff. And, Jesus was constantly going after this kind of stuff, how people would take it like, when you read in, like if you look at Genesis to Revelation, if you think that the serpent in Genesis was a type of Satan, think about this, like the Genesis narrative starts with a snake. By the time you get to Revelation, there's dragons, and not just dragons, but dragons with 7 heads coming up out of the ocean. Moses starts with 10 commandments, ends up with 613. And it's like people, because of their own thoughts and limitations and prejudices, took something that should have been simple and organic and beautiful and just totally made it into something that's way more complicated than it ever should have been. That's why Jesus' message was so simple. Like, consider the lilies. Go sit in a field and look at a flower. Stop straining at gnats and swallowing camels. Stop doing all these things. Martha, Martha, you're troubled about many things. He's constantly simplifying it, bringing it down, paring it down. This should be so simple that a little child shall be able to receive it. He brings a child and he puts him in the center of the teaching, and he says, unless you become like this child, you can't enter the kingdom. So he's constantly, whatever is the opposite of complicated, which I guess is simplified, he's constantly simplifying it. And I was thinking about this the other day. For those of you that didn't know me at Church in the Now, if you're going out I-20, like from Atlanta to Augusta, when you go through Conyers, there's a big 43-acre complex. That was Church in the Now. There's the big sign says Springfield now, because it's Springfield Baptist Church bought that property. And I remember, and I'm proud of that. I have no regrets. I know people, miss it. And, believe me, I've heard all of that for 13 years now. But I remember when we were building the second building, well, the third building, the big one. I built a big building because the church grew, and that's what you're supposed to do, right? I wasn't even ambitious about that kind of stuff, but the church When we moved to that property in our first building, the size doubled in 1 year. So it just seemed like, well, it's time for us to build something bigger. So we acquired more property, and that's what you do. I came from a long line of builders. My dad built churches while I was growing up. My grandfather built churches. My uncle built church. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. And I'm not a good fundraiser. I've always, I understood the law of attraction long before it was ever taught to me. I just always believed, if you do the right thing, if you're in your zone, money will just gravitate to you, and you'll make a difference in people's lives, and they'll want to sow into you and believe in what you're doing. And I still live by that. All these years later, that's how I have lived my entire adult life. I had a few odd jobs in college, but the ministry has supported me my whole life. And fundraising was a challenge for me. I remember when we took the pledges which is what you do. I mean, this is how you build a church. You take pledges, and the people see how much money you got to work with. That's how you come up with the size building you're going to build. It's just, that wasn't unique to me. That's just what people do. And so we raised enough money to get the financing for, it's a very large building. And, but when they started working on the parking lot, but even before the parking lot, when they started grading it, that's where they grade the property. We found out why Rockdale County is called Rockdale, because 10 inches below the soil is nearly solid granite. It's like when you go to Stone Mountain and you see that big piece of granite that erupts out of, well, the flat part of it is under Rockdale County, part of DeKalb County. So they came to me and said, we've got to blast through all of this rock before we can even grade it, before we could even pour a parking lot. Because you got to do a parking lot first so you can start bringing in all the trucks. And there's a whole sequence of things you have to do. So parking has to come. You have to have a place for trucks to drive in and not get bogged down in the mud. And so we had to blast rock just to do the grading that cost $500,000. That's not in the budget. This is with the money you've come up with to build the building. You've got to come up with $500,000 just to grade it, just so you can pour the parking lot, just so the equipment can drive in here. And man, that was a lot of, right when that was going on, I was going through a legal thing with somebody wanting more child support than I was paying because I'd already been through a divorce. So I was in court. I was dealing with that. I'm trying to run this ministry, and it was a extremely stressful time. And I remember walking out there on the property, and they do the thing where they do fire in the hole, and they explode and we figured it out somehow. We found the money to do it, and we built the building. But I remember I went out there to pray because I was heavily burdened with this, I've raised all this money, and all I'm going to produce is a really nice parking lot. I promised everybody there'd be a building here. And I'm not trying to sound dramatic, but I was hanging on by a thread emotionally. And I started to pray, and I'm not saying that I heard God say this to me, but just clear as a bell, something in me said, don't pray about this. God never told you to do this. This is, all of the stress you have in your life is the result of decisions that you've made. So figure it out. And I did. It was like, instead of me, I could say, Jesus came through for me, but that's not what happened. I actually went out there and learned autonomy. I thought, oh, well, all right. This is something I said was the right thing to do, and I got these people to buy into it, so we'll figure it out. And we did. We built it. We poured the, I don't know where we got that extra $500,000 from, but we did. But my point is, there was no point in me saying, oh, God, do you see this great burden I have? I got to raise $500,000. Because I think God would probably say, man, you could have just wiped out a lot of homelessness for $500,000. I mean, isn't that what Jesus would have said? And I'm not against buildings. I'm not against, if you're a builder and that's in your blood, mazel tov, enjoy. I'm not saying, whatever you do in your ministry is your business. Like I hear some of these guys, I'll watch on YouTube some of these guys that have jets for their ministry, their mega ministries, and they'll get interviewed by people who are accusing them of spending too much money, and they get all defensive for it and everything. I think, stop defending it. Just say, yeah, I have a big ministry. I fly a lot. We bought a private plane. End of subject. Like, if you don't try to spiritualize it, because you could say, yeah, Bishop, you could have used that money to feed the homeless. Well, you could go sell your flat screen TV right now and change somebody's life with the money from that. So it's relative. I don't get into mind games like that. My point is, most of the things in your life that are super complicated didn't come from things that God told you to do. They're things that you did. They're things that I did. And so that's what I want to leave you with today. Not only am I saying religion shouldn't be that complicated, I'm saying, and let me give you this disclaimer before I say what I'm about to say. I am acutely aware that there is human suffering in the world. I hear from people every single day of my life, and have for my entire adult life. I hear from somebody who's in crisis all the time. The majority of the conversations I have are with people who are in crisis. That just comes with the territory. I'm in the ministry. I have a connection. For some reason, people want to tell me their stuff. I even have strangers sometimes that come up to me and say, I don't know why I want to tell you this, and they start, and I let them tell me their thing, because that's what I do. I'm not even complaining about it. I'm just saying, I know there's hunger in the world. I know there's racism. I know there's war and rumors of war. I know what's going on in Ukraine. I know there's suffering everywhere. I am also saying life is not supposed to be that complicated. Everything's not supposed to be that hard. I'm not talking about being some Pollyanna that runs through life going, la, 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 I have no problems. I'm not talking about being in denial. I'm saying, if you really honestly get honest with yourself, most of the things that stress you out are probably things that you've brought on yourself. And if you can't see that, just think about it for a little bit. It's easy to complain about a complicated relationship, but a lot of times it's the relationship you asked for. It's what you got into, and you played your own role in the complicating of it. And that's why even I'm all for resolution when you can get it, but honest to God, sometimes it's just easier to forgive somebody just because it simplifies things. It's like to try to work this out and flesh this out, and you said this and you said that. It would just be easier to say, you know what, I just forgive you, because yes, relationships are complicated, but really they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be that complicated. Again, I know we're all adults. I'm not saying that, there's stuff that happens, but if you're constantly stressed out with your life, like if you've got a job that's just so stressful that you hate every day of your life, well, then change it. And if you immediately give me 1,000 reasons, well, I can't change it because of this and that, you've already complicated it more than it ever should have been. Like if you like what you do, then do it, and you get paid for it, and get paid for it. And like for me, I live in a small place, and I like living in a small place because I already lived in a big place. I already had a house with a swimming pool, and it was great. And, I swam in it maybe once a year. My kids enjoyed it more than I did. I'm glad especially the younger two, I'm glad they had that experience where they were growing up. And it was, we had some nice barbecues out by the pool, and that was fun. But it was also a hell of a lot of complication. I mean, when Ken and I go on vacation somewhere, I hardly get in a pool now. Even if I go on vacation, I just don't. I'm not against it. If you're a big swimmer, then fine, get a pool. It's worth it to you, fine. I'm just saying for me personally, I already had that, and quite frankly, it was more trouble than it's worth. Now, if something's worth it to you, like every year we go to New York for Christmas, and New York at Christmas time is a madhouse, no doubt about it. It's insanely overpopulated, and every year somebody will say, "Oh, I bet it's crazy up there at Christmas." Yeah, it is. I bet you're not ever going up there again. Like, yeah, the week before Christmas we'll be there. Because for me, that's worth it. I wouldn't want to live in it all the time, but yes, that's part of an experience that I enjoy. I'm not asking anybody else to go. For me, it's worth it, and we've done it enough that we kind of know these are the best times to fly, and here's where it's best to go. Like I can cut out a lot of complication, but it's still, getting to the airport and flying and yes, there's stuff involved with it. There's some effort that you have to make on anything. So for me, it's worth it. And usually by the time we're, at the end of our little 3 days that we're there, I'm ready to, there will usually be a moment where I'm on the sidewalk and it's so crowded you can't walk. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm ready. And it's fine. And maybe one day, years from now, I'll think, I don't think I want to go this year. Maybe that will happen. And if so, fine. I've got the memories. I've got the pictures. I will go as long as it's something that I enjoy, that Ken enjoys, or, maybe one day I'd like to take my granddaughters there and have a time with them. I do love it. But what I'm saying is there's no point in me complaining about the airport because I chose to go there. I chose to fly there. I chose to go. It's like when people say there's so much traffic in the city. Like, yeah, it's a city. There's a lot of people here and they have cars. Hence the traffic. If you don't like the traffic and live out in the country, fine. It's fine. So I'm familiar with the idea of putting up with something that's complicated because you enjoy it enough. That makes sense to me. But if it's something that you just gripe about every day and sucks the life out of your enjoyment, then get rid of it. Scale it down. I mean, don't read more into this than I'm saying. I'm not trying to get everybody to get divorced and stuff, but I will tell you this. If you're in a relationship that's just too hard all the time, I'm not talking about taking care of a sick loved one. I'm talking about, those are things, that's different. I'm talking about just somebody you just can't get along with. It's just something all the time. At some point you have to look at your life and think, is this worth it? Is this, now, granted, this was written from a male perspective because the Bible was written by men to men. But the 2 or 3 places in the Proverbs would say things like, it's better to dwell in the corner top of the roof with a crust of bread than with a brawling and contentious woman. I mean, there was, and Solomon should know he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. So he was writing all the time like, it ain't worth it, be by yourself. And, if you like the fighting and the craziness, like I remember there was this couple that I knew for years and years. I can't imagine they'd be watching this because I blocked them on Facebook. But anyway, sweet Jesus, this couple fought and 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 fought. And somehow over the years still ended up having 4 or 5 kids. I haven't talked to them in years, but for the early part of their relationship, I was super involved in this. And then we went through a period of time where I didn't hear from them. And one night, middle of the night, she called me and said, "Oh, I'm just freaking out because," I won't say his name, but he got up and left the house and I don't know where he is. And I said, wait, I thought y'all were divorced. And she said, "Oh, we were divorced. We got back together." And I thought, good God, I'm exhausted just talking to y'all. And somehow they figured it out, because the last time I saw them on Facebook, yeah, they did, Jeanette. If that's their journey, that's fine. To me, like, good Lord, you could say, well, that's just passion. Well, okay, if that's your definition of passion, I might want a little less passion in my life. If something's too hard, if something's too complicated, if something's stressing you out unnecessarily, then I want to say the words that Jesus said, "Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and learn of me, for I'm meek and lowly in heart. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, because I'm easy. I'm easy to be entreated." Proverbs says it's the way of the transgressor that's hard. So do some inventory on your life. And, in a few days, I just got a thing yesterday that Medicare says I'm in the program now. So, society wants to make sure you know that you are now officially a senior. Like, I got it, and it's fine. And so a lot of people in my age group, I see them scaling their lives down. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there comes a time in your life where you're like, yeah, I think I've done enough of this. I'd like to maybe get a smaller place, maybe get, and if you love the complication, like, my mom loves living in the house, but it's something all the time she has to deal with. But in her mind, that keeps her connected to Dad. So, she deals with the anxiety that comes with that. And people tell me all the time, "What is it? Why didn't your mom move to a smaller place?" Well, she likes the complication. That's her choice, and that's fine. That's everybody's entitled to make their own choices. But if you have power and agency over your life, then it's up to you to simplify it to the point that you only do the stuff you really want to do. And if it doesn't make your soul happy, don't do it. I look back now, I think about most of the stuff. And this is no reflection on my parents, because they were raised in the same system. But most of our life growing up was being preoccupied with what people in the church thought. Like, well, you can't wear that because Sister so-and-so won't she won't think you look holy enough. It was like, I don't think it was ever on our radar screen to try to please God. It was always, don't make the board mad, because they're going to, when they don't like a preacher here, they run them off. And it was like this constant effort exerted over stuff that doesn't even matter. And then when you realize there's over 45,000 Christian denominations, it's just much ado about nothing. It's like that, I've told you the story about when I was in Israel, and it was so hot, and we were touring the Dome of the Rock, and the Muslim guy got into a fight with the other guy, because he said, it just from here, and please, I'm not trying to be politically incorrect, but he goes, this is where Muhammad left in 3 chariots. And this guy says, no, my friend, it was 5 chariots. And they get into fight. And we're out there in 103-degree weather, and they're fighting over whether it was 3 or 5. And I'm like, you guys, it doesn't matter, because it didn't happen anyway. It could be 1,000 chariots. Just let's get on with the tour. But then I thought, well, I know exactly what they're doing, because I grew up hearing that kind of fighting over nonsense. Just nonsense. Stuff that, Paul said, I put away childish things when I grew up. So that's the word for you. You need to own your life and simplify it and focus on the things that really matter. And quite honestly, I would put at the top of that list taking care of yourself. You can say, no, it's taking care of my family. I disagree. I think your number one goal should be to take care of yourself the best way that you can, so that you can be there for your family and love other people. But if you spend all your time burning the candle at both ends to make everybody else happy, all you're going to do is burn yourself out and die prematurely, and they're going to keep going. They're going to go on with their life. That's the aggravating thing. You know, the people that suck the energy out of you, once they kill you, they go on and start, you know, putting their tentacles in somebody else. It's not, you know, it's just not worth it. So take care of you and find what really matters. Hey, I just saw John's name come up. Today's John's birthday. John, happy birthday to you, my friend. So that is the dealio. And if that was a word for you, let me know. All right. I said something about supporting the ministry, and some of you rallied to that, so thank you very much. I appreciate it. It is still a good time for you to give, so it couldn't be easier. Just go to Bish in the Now, like short for Bishop, bishinthenow.com. It's just a click that you do. If you want to give to me directly, if this word meant anything to you, I've got all the cash apps. And next Sunday is going to be the last mobile metron. So I got big love for all of you. Looking forward to seeing you on April 2nd. And we're going to have a really good time. So just basically chill out, okay? Please relax. Please just enjoy your day and enjoy your life and enjoy the journey, all right? Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. All right? That's it. Bye.